On today's episode of the show, we discuss the newest development in the Coleman Hawkins recruiting saga, 2 new football commits, and more. Coming up here shortly, so stay tuned.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome in to another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence, native Louisvillian, third season hosting the Locked On Louisville podcast, credential media member, and PA announcer. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. As always, I want to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. Coleman Hawkins is visiting Louisville during the weekend. Huge development in this recruitment. We'll discuss the significance, what this means for Louisville's chances coming up shortly. There are 2 new football commits in the 2025 class, Caleb Matelau and LeBron Hill. We'll discuss what both bring to the table. We'll also answer whether or not Jeff Brohm's recruiting vision is sustainable for success long-term for the Cardinals football program. A lot of good stuff on the docket for this Thursday evening show. Thanks for tuning in. We begin on the basketball side of things. We were sort of in waiting to see whether or not Louisville was serious about adding another player. With all the scholarships full, the rumblings came out that Louisville could move one of the 2 medical redshirts to walk-on status and then bring them back onto scholarship the season after, thus allowing the Cardinals another scholarship to fill another need on the roster. The Cardinals had reached out to Jamari Phillips, former Arizona signee, at the end of May, so at that point it was clear as to what Louisville's motives were, but a name that has been brought up a ton is Illinois transfer Coleman Hawkins, and for good reason. Even before the Cardinals went on that run to where they added Kason Pryor, Kenai Ruths, Noah Waterman in the span of like a weekend, less than 48 hours it seemed, give or take, Coleman Hawkins' name got brought up. Now, we didn't really understand or have a great grasp on how realistic a Coleman Hawkins addition would be because one of the top-ranked players available in the portal, he's ranked as the second best power forward overall out of players both committed and uncommitted. So it shows you that he is of the highest caliber. He is a bona fide top 20 transfer. I would personally argue top 10, and would bring an aspect to this team that I wouldn't say that Louisville is lacking, but it gives you an opportunity to raise your ceiling. Now, Coleman Hawkins, for those who don't know or need a little bit of a refresher, 12 points per game, 6 rebounds per contest, 37% from 3. It was a career high for him from behind the arc. 6'10", 225 pounds from Sacramento, plays like a guard but can still bang down low. 12 points per game on a balanced Illinois team that had Terrence Shannon, Marcus Damask, a lot of guys getting shots up. So averaging 12 and 6 and then having another season of college eligibility is huge. He took his name out of the NBA draft conversation on deadline day, and it was the same fashion in which he entered the portal. He was sort of a last-minute addition to the portal, so it leads you to believe that it wasn't a coincidence, that there were probably some schools lined up. Well, since then, Kansas State got Ugonna Onyensu. I think it's Trevon Brazil went back to Arkansas. So 2 of the possible suitors added solid players. John Calipari made a comment that he wants to go probably 9 players in the rotation and then fill the rest out with scholarships. Arkansas has 9 players on scholarship to this point. So it seems like on paper that this could turn into a Louisville versus SMU versus North Carolina matchup. The Cardinals, however, got the first announced visit for the Illinois star. Now, obviously, we've mentioned that when you get a visit from a player in the transfer portal, it is automatically, by default, significant, especially if you are the only visit announced. You're in June at the moment, so time, I would say it's like not of the essence, but it's not like Hawkins can really just stroll through this recruitment. I mean, he can enjoy it to an extent, but you imagine that he's going to want to make his selection. Louisville getting that first choice. Truly Donovan, in his Discord, stated that he believed that Louisville wasn't going to be the only visit. Planned, I should say. The Cardinals will have every opportunity to close the recruitment on his visit, and that has to be the focal point. But the first step is getting that visit. It confirms that the interest is reciprocated, and it also confirms that Louisville has a legitimate chance, has as legitimate of a chance as any team out there. Now, I understand that at this point, we wonder whether or not Louisville has the NIL to compete. They would have to at this point. You don't get a visit from Coleman Hawkins if you don't have the NIL. Even if you didn't, I feel like Pat Kelsey, Josh Hurd could go to the boosters and donors saying, hey, look, we have the opportunity to add this caliber of a player. Can we get a little bit of a boost in the money? And it seems like it might not have even had to got to that point. I'm not even sure that it did. So NIL has seen a huge surge over the past couple of months with the 502 circle, and more. Shout out to everyone pitching in and helping out for the cause. But I digress in that respect. But I'm saying all that to say that Louisville has the money there. Now, SMU and North Carolina will be able to compete. It's just a matter of selling your brand and selling the fit on the court. A lot of people question whether or not Coleman Hawkins would be a fit for this team, both on and off the court. Like, there is some that are questioning Coleman Hawkins' character, saying that, well, he, the social media antics, the antics off the court to where he talks a lot of trash. And I'll be honest with you, I don't care. I mean, obviously social media is a slippery slope, but I really would be a fan of the Coleman Hawkins experience. I think that, he brings like a sense of genuine, a sense of a genuine, I don't even know the word to use there. He just seems very genuine is what I'm trying to say. But I do not mind talking trash on the court. I'll be completely honest. In all honesty, I think Louisville needs that swagger back. I think that they've added some players that fit that mold. Case in Pryor, Noah Waterman, and some other players who either have gone on the record or it's been, stated that, they like to talk. I mean, players at this level like to talk. I talk on my Wednesday night basketball league. And I mean, even though our level of competition isn't as good as the high Division I, it's still the same. These guys are competitive and they want to win. So I think these talks of, oh, is he a culture fit? Yes. Yes, he is. There's never, in my knowledge, there's never been a rumor or an account that he is a cancer in the locker room. It seems like his teammates love him. And I feel kind of goofy having to sort of debunk this whole character thing. I don't care. And honestly, at this point, I don't really care what NBA teams care about either at this point because he's in college. And other NBA players talk trash. Like, we just glorified Anthony Edwards for being unapologetically him and talking a lot of trash in the NBA playoffs. So again, I'm going to put that off to the side. On the court, I do think that there is a mesh. I think there's an ability to have a cohesive system with him in it on both ends, offensively and defensively. And if he were to commit, we would dive more into that fit and how well, he would fit alongside Case and Pryor and some of the other guys on the roster. But overall, if you have an opportunity to add a guy like Coleman Hawkins, you do it. you don't ask questions. There's the whole, well, other players are going to get unhappy. Let me tell you something. You have an opportunity in your first offseason to make an absolute splash and to show the rest of the country that Louisville is not to be messed with, and that the days of the Cardinals being this doormat and laughingstock of college basketball, nah, man, they're over. If you have an opportunity to put together the best roster out there, you do it. If you have a player or two that's unhappy, it sucks, and the coaches make the money that they make to have these discussions and to be able to work through that and be able to, sort of smooth over any disgruntledness. But if you're adding an upgrade to the team, they're like, oh, well, you're going to mess the chemistry up of this team. These guys, these are 13 new players. This is not like you brought in 5 new guys to a nucleus of 8 returning guys and then bringing in one of the guys would have messed up the chemistry. No, you're bringing in 13 new players that if they are on campus right now, they've been on campus for probably less than a month. So I think a lot of these trendy discussion points are getting overblown a little bit. I don't really see a reason why you don't add a player like Coleman Hawkins. If the alternative is not adding a player, it's hands down not even a discussion at this point, in my opinion. But Louisville will have a chance in this recruitment. They get the first visiting this weekend. Don't know when exactly he will be landing in the Derby City. All I know is that he should be, or all accounts are stating that he's going to be on campus this weekend. So Louisville will get the first opportunity to land the Illinois Star. Let's switch gears a little bit, go to the football side of things. Jeff Brohm is putting out good news of his own, and we don't want to not discuss that. 2 new football commits in the 2025 class, Caleb Matelau, and the Cardinals got LeBron. Pretty exciting. We'll discuss what both players bring to the team coming up here after we talk about our friends over at Gametime. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. It makes getting NBA Finals tickets even easier and faster. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. Now, I won't be doing this because I have a mortgage payment now, but a couple of my friends have made it a point of emphasis to check off something on their bucket list and go to the NBA Finals. I got them set up with Gametime, and look, the reviews from them, I earned some brownie points with my small circle. They downloaded the app and messed with the different seat views, the deals, and the lowest price guarantee, which means that if you find a price in your section for lower, Gametime will credit 110% of the difference. And like I mentioned, last minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Cardinal fans, thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. If you continually watch Fox Sports or ESPN, have to turn down the volume because of all the shouting, it's time to make the switch to Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and more. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your Cardinals every day. We switch over to the football side where Jeff Brohm is like, okay, there's a lot of good news about the basketball program. I'm getting a little jealous. Let's have some good news about football. Kidding, obviously, or am I? But nonetheless, 2 new 2025 football commitments. We begin in the Sunshine State, Louisville going back to the state of Florida, which has been a trend since, well, really before Jeff Brohm took over, but definitely since Jeff Brohm has taken over. They got a commitment from Caleb Matelau. And I'll be honest with you, when they got a commitment from him, I was a little, I'm not going to say worried, but I was completely confused because I didn't know anything about Caleb. He wasn't ranked according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, but I reached out to I'll say it, the Locked On Podcast Network national recruiting analyst Brian Smith to get his comment on what he thought about Mateau's skill set. And I thought it was very encouraging to hear what he had to say. For those who don't know, Brian has been on the show a handful of times. He recently moved from Florida to Alabama, but spent a ton of time building up connections across the state of Florida. So he has a great pulse on Sunshine State recruiting. This is what he said, right? I'm reading to you verbatim what he said. It was pretty short and sweet, but says, violent, intense striker. Traditional middle linebacker with speed built for today's game, a true diamond in the rough. And we talk about this term, diamond in the rough. We throw it around pretty loosely. But when it comes to a player from the state of Florida, it makes a ton of sense because guys get overlooked a ton. If you're talking about taking an unranked player and banking on him being a diamond in the rough, you're looking at the state of Florida, Georgia, Texas, California, maybe even Ohio, etc. Places with hotbeds for recruiting talent. Matelau, 6'1", 6'2", 215 pounds, transferred from Bradenton to Miami Palmetto as a junior, or I should say, as a junior, had 96 tackles, 2 fumble recoveries, a pass breakup, a forced fumble, and a sack. Multi-sport athlete, also a member of the track and field team. Overall, sideline to sideline linebacker, a ton of speed and pursuit out of the backfield. That explosiveness jumps off the page. If you are not sold on this edition, you need to watch his film. Go watch his huddle. It is incredible. Brian Smith said it best. He is a middle linebacker in today's game. You look at the overall recruiting, there's not a ton of Power 5 flavor. Louisville tried to get in on this recruitment early on. Pittsburgh and Wake Forest were the only other Power 5 offers that were listed. And he was unranked when he committed to Louisville and already has jumped up the rankings. 784th, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, 80th best linebacker. I think he has potential top 500. I won't say a ceiling, but I think a destination at the end of signing day. I think with a solid summer of camps, with a great senior year, I could see this guy skyrocketing. He plays on a very, very good talent level down in Miami. I love this addition to the team. I think Matelau will bring a lot of great things to this program. The Cardinals got LeBron Hill. Now, that's not to take away from the significance, but LeBron Hill, like LeBron James, two-sport athlete in high school, played basketball, averaged double-digit scoring, 6 rebounds as a junior, from Hammond, Indiana, plays for Morton Senior, which, if I'm not mistaken, is up around that northern corridor, maybe northwest where Indiana meets Illinois, right around Chicago, Gary area, up there in northern Indiana. 6'4", 180 pounds, ranked as the 841st best player in the country, according to 24/7 Sports, just outside of the top 100 of wide receivers in the country. But we talked about Jeff Brohm's emphasis on local recruiting. If you're within a 5-hour radius, you will be subject to being recruited. And Louisville has gone out and gotten players from Ohio, Kentucky, Missouri, Indiana as well. LeBron is definitely, I think, the type of wide receiver that a lot of fans have been waiting for. We've had some players that can play in the slot, some sub 6'2" receivers. I know that there is a sector of the fan base that wants a larger receiver, 6'4". LeBron plays like Seth Dawkins to me, a former Louisville Cardinal wideout that didn't have like an extremely blazing top-end speed, but it was an underrated, deceptive quickness, the ability to get behind that first level of the defense, the one-on-one jump ball potential. I think the red zone opportunities will be there for LeBron, extending the drives on third down. Underrated route runner. I think that he has the potential to be an every down type of player at the Power 5. And if you were wondering about his offer sheet, it wasn't the greatest up until recently, and it seems like his recruitment is definitely starting to pick up steam. I want to read to you what all has happened since late March. Louisville offered probably ahead of the curve on March 3rd. Since then, in late March, got offers from Miami, Purdue, and Kentucky. South Florida offered in May. He took the official visit to Louisville this past weekend and committed soon after that. He is slated for an official visit at Purdue this weekend. I'm not sure if he's going to be making that visit, but I like this addition to the wide receiving core. You're going to have to replace multiple guys at the position at the end of this season. But not only these two additions, but I think the overall, the 2025 class overall so far has sort of raised some eyebrows and sparked some concerns amongst the fan base as to whether or not Jeff Brohm's recruiting vision is going to be sustainable in terms of long-term success. And I think it will, but we need to really break it down and explain why. And I'll do that here momentarily, coming up in the final segment. On the final segment of the show, we discuss why Brohm's recruiting vision, it's not harmful to long-term success. Before we do that, I do want to, again, thank you all for making Locked On Louisville your first visit. If you feel inclined to do so, please drop a like on this video. Subscribe if you see the need to. It would definitely be appreciated. We are working on some special guests for the off-season. Less episodes, but hopefully the same amount of substance. And also working on improving the sound quality of the show. So definitely appreciate the patience. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. It's been a long ride this is the conclusion of the third year of Locked On Louisville since the podcast started in 2021. But I appreciate everyone, whether you are an everydayer, you tune in sporadically, whatever. But let's get into the final segment. Jeff Brohm's recruiting high school-wise hasn't been overall the greatest, and a lot of that is due to the portal. A lot of the NIL budget has been allocated for bringing in great portal classes since he took over. And he's utilizing the portal to bring in players that have produced either at the Power 5 level or at the collegiate level to come in and make this team as competitive as it can be. And we saw that pay dividends. Louisville won 10 games in its first year. Went to their first ever ACC championship game. You don't do that without addressing the needs the way you did via the portal. Well, this year's portal class was probably larger. And I think that even with the returning guys, there's going to be a lot of portal players on the field this fall. The 2024 class was fairly small, less than 16 members. It wasn't really highly rated, although I think that there are some gems in that recruiting class. It wasn't as highly regarded as the 2023 class with Pierce Clarkson, Aaron Williams, Stanquan Clark, etc. And then the 2025 class, I think with 8 commitments, it's ranked as the 40th best class. There, according to some sites, there are some 4-stars like Mason Mims and Jake Cook. Jordan Allen is a highly regarded receiver from Georgia. And then you have some other players who overall, I think, bring a lot to the table. But for the most part, there isn't that top-end recruit in this class yet. So it has sparked a lot of people to wonder, well, why is recruiting suffering? Is Jeff Brohm just going to recruit diamond in the rough guys and just totally utilize the portal? Well, I think that 2 things can be true at one time. Number one is that you can't replace your whole team via the portal every year. Like adding 30 portal guys in offseason isn't sustainable long-term. I think that Jeff Brohm knows that. I think he went as far as saying something along the lines of he was aware of that. But with the situation at hand, it's going to vary based upon the offseason. And the first 2 off seasons, he's felt the need to utilize the portal more. So he's shown that he knows that you can't just rely portal heavy. You have to, bring in a good amount of high school prospects as well. But in the same token, I think that high school recruiting is so much different, right now, because of how the portal is just dominating recruiting. So I think that there's a couple things to focus on here. Number one, I think that it's way too early to look at high school recruiting rankings at the moment because we're just now going into the summer. I think it is wise to wait until the middle of the fall to really have that conversation and also see what the commitment list is looking like. I would imagine this class is probably going to be more than last year's class in terms of pure numbers. But with 8 commitments, I think that a couple of these guys have 4-star level potential. I also think that they are in on some large name prospects. We've seen players on campus this past week. It's not like they're not recruiting these type of players. They are definitely recruiting them, that you have to get those commitments, but they're trying. And I think that they're going to land a couple of big-time guys. So I would, number one, say let's be patient now. If early signing day rolls around and Louisville is I won't say still has, but they put together a lackluster class, which I don't believe that's going to be the case. People will say, well, Louisville is a traditional 3-star prospect school with the occasional 4-star. And that is correct. But to get to that next level, I do think that there needs to be a little bit more emphasis on the high school ranks with higher ranked players that you can develop, that you don't worry about having to get outbid in the portal as much like you did with Tyler Barron and Penny Boone's situation. Is you have a little bit more continuity. I think it's a little easier to retain players on your team with NIL than it is to go out and bring in new players because you built that relationship. There is a level of trust, a level of familiarity with the team and the program and the city. So overall, I don't really have a problem with Brohm's recruiting vision at this point. I would acknowledge that high school recruiting, I think that you do need to add multiple 4-star level guys in this 2025 class. I don't think it's time to panic. I think that there are, of the 8 commits, I think that there are a couple, 2, 3, maybe even 4 that could end up being 4-star level guys. Some already are. So I would just say be patient. Let's wait to see how things look in the fall when we have a better idea of what this class is going to round out to. So we'll see what the summer holds for the Cardinals, but I'm okay with them taking the players that they are right now. So we will see. Like I said, conversations can change in a couple months, but for right now, that is the tune that we are singing. And that is going to wrap up this Thursday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. Be sure to drop a like, hit that subscribe button. It is definitely appreciated. Share on social media, etc. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here very soon.